Hey guys, it's Dave. Welcome back to another video. Today I want to talk to you about Rocket Lab's stock and what the stock price has been doing over the past few weeks. It's really wild stuff when you really think about what's happened and get down into the weeds. I also want to tell you about my thoughts on the stock movement, what I'm going to do about it, how I'm thinking about trading the stock in the future, and just to ask you what your plans are around the stock as well. Drop me a comment to let me know. Before we dive into that, if you're not yet subscribed, I hope you'll consider doing that. The link is down below, and those likes always help out with the algorithm spreading the videos to more people. Okay, with that out of the way, let's take a quick look at Rocket Lab's stock chart. All right, guys, here we are with the graph of the stock and a few things I want to show you. First of all, I have to hand it to my fiance on this one. I guess she was right. And props to her, she's already teasing me about it, and it's all in good fun. So if you didn't watch my previous video, basically what happened is that my fiance sold the stock at $5.80. Now, I said in a previous video, I thought she made about 20% on that trade. She wanted me to let everybody know that she actually made 36% on the trade, so a little bit better than I gave her credit for. That means she was buying, down lower here and sold. Well, if you look at the chart, and this is just a 3-month chart of Rocket Lab, she got $5.80 for it. And if we look at the peak, I mean, come on, it says $5.79. She must have, got it basically right at the peak before it dropped. Like that, you can't be that good. That's mostly luck, but hard to argue with that, honestly. So I said I'm just going to hold for the long run. She said she's going to sell, wait for it to drop, and buy it back. And she sold all her shares, by the way, 36% return. Well done for her. So the data is in so far, and so far she has won. Of course, that's only half the battle. She still needs to pull the trigger at getting back in at a reasonable price lower than what she sold at in order for her to fully beat me on this trade. So we'll have to wait and see how far the stock falls. So congratulations to her. Okay, with that out of the way, in the last few days, it's been quite bad. We've dropped down from 574 down to 520, and there's been no real bad news, no particular reason behind it other than maybe the macro and just the regular fluctuations of the stock. Very odd to see, though, because I want to show you a couple things. So first of all, we had, if you'll remember, the 8K filing revealing that Rocket Lab got that massive $500+ million contract with the government, more than doubling their backlog, and the value, the revenue value is a quarter of the entire market cap of the company, a very big deal for the company. So we know this happened on December 21st. Now, Rocket Lab also recently returned to flight. They had an anomaly with their Electron rocket. They were offline for quite a while, nailing down the root cause of that and putting in fixes. So they've successfully returned to flight, demonstrating that, they can start realizing that very important Electron revenue again over the short term, and hopefully, unlock that incredibly busy cadence they announced, which is 22, 23 launches for next year, which is more than a double. So another very important event for the company and for the stock. So let's remember those two dates, December 14th and December 21st. Now, this is a 1-month chart of the stock, and we can see pretty clearly December 21st right here. Okay, yes, there was a big move when they received that contract. Fully justified in my opinion, maybe even should have moved a little more just considering the magnitude of it. It's not every day a company announces a new contract, doubling their backlog, a new contract that's worth a quarter of the market cap of the entire company. So, big move up and fully justified. Of course, it's moved down again since then. So where are we now? We're just around this peak. And what happened around here? Well, if you'll remember, this was Electron's return to flight. So we were all super excited that Electron returned to flying. There was a successful launch. A lot of us were looking for a big stock move upward the next day. And instead, we all remember what happened. It crashed, and it was extremely frustrating, but it's happened many times before with Rocket Lab stock where it'll crash right after a launch. So comparing right before that launch to where we are today, almost the same, right? Today we're still a little hair higher than that, but basically the same as we were back on December 14th. And we've had two incredibly important events since then. So two incredibly important events that are extremely good for the company, and we're now back down to that exact same level. So to me, once again, identifying this as something that doesn't really make a ton of sense, and there's no doubt in my mind that the underlying stock is more valuable today than it was back on the 14th, before they successfully demonstrated Electron can return to flight and before they received that massive deal. It does look like it may continue down a little further. Obviously, macro factors can affect this. The other thing you have to remember is stock markets are pretty much at an all-time high. So, maybe we'll have a good 2024. A lot of people seem to think so, but I don't know if we can rely on the overall macro markets to carry the stock. Let me know what you think there. I think it really has to be delivered by the company executing, and more importantly, analysts and investors recognizing that, which, hasn't really seemed to be the case, at least enough in my opinion. So that being said, makes me feel quite bullish on the company because we've had all this good news. The stock is still back to where it was before that good news. Therefore, it's better value for your dollar. So a few things that I've been looking at today. First of all, these are put options for the stock, which basically means I agree to buy it in the future for a set price, and someone else gives me some money for that, thinking that it will drop below that set price and they can make money on the difference. So these are starting to look more and more attractive. I haven't pulled the trigger on any of these yet, but to me, a $4 put option on Rocket Lab is basically just money in the bank. Like, you can't go wrong on it. I've done it probably 5 or 6 times now. Every time I've actually just kept the premiums. So if we look at the bid ask right now, we can see the ask is 10 cents per share. Each contract represents 100 shares, so each contract would be $10. And I could sell, potentially a bunch of these and just get tons of premiums. If for some crazy reason the stock did drop to $4 per share and I would be put the stock, you can think of it as basically, say I sold these puts for 10 cents, that would put my cost basis at 3.9, which is pretty darn close to all-time lows for the stock, and something I'd be extremely excited to get that price on it. So when I look at puts like this, to me, it's just a no-lose situation almost. When I could say, every trade can go wrong, but in my opinion, this is as close as you can get to a no-lose situation with options. And I am getting very interested in them. I know Vince actually recently sold some put options he mentioned on Twitter. I'm not too sure if that was a 5 strike or a 4. 5s will obviously pay you out more, but then your break even, at least right now, would be more like, say, 460, which in the long term I think is still a very good price and very undervalued, but it is possible that gets executed, and then in the short term it drops below that. When you're talking about a cost basis of 3.9, to me, that's just like a no-brainer. So this is the ask, not the bid, so there's not necessarily someone out there willing to pay that right now. I'm going to watch it very closely. I think it's possible this drop could continue on a little while longer. If I can get 10 cents for each of these, I'm definitely going to look into doing that. I might even just drop a sell order and just leave it waiting in case someone does trigger it. So that is something I'm very interested in. Now let's talk about LEAPs, which is long-term call options. So, this is debatable whether you really need any extra alpha when it comes to Rocket Lab. I think the potential of the stock itself is probably good enough that you don't necessarily need to play around with call options, but it's fun and it can either multiply your returns or multiply your losses as opposed to buying the underlying stock. Now that we're in 2024, we have the January 16th options available, which is basically 2 years from now, a little bit over 2 years. So when it comes to long-term call options and Rocket Lab, it's been something I've been quite interested in for a while now. But of course, the January 26th was not available. And January 25, so that's like a year and a bit out, I still think there could be a chance they're not profitable yet, and we could still, even though they by that point should be showing that they're very close to profitability, the market may not really recognize what's happening until they actually hit profitability. That's kind of the danger with options, right? You not only have to predict that the company's going to execute and do well, you have to predict that the rest of the market is going to recognize that and price them accordingly and price them what you think is a fair price at the right time. So now that we're talking 2026, I think there's a good chance by that point Rocket Lab should be profitable, and by that point we should have a big move in the stock. So I've been thinking about buying some long-term call options. It's very likely I'll buy at least a small amount, maybe just for fun, maybe just to kind of show you guys, okay, this is how the option has been moving, this is how the stock has been moving, and we can all kind of learn together about these options and kind of how they can trade. A good way to think about it is, let's say I buy $5 call option for that date for $1.70 per share. Basically, on January 16th of 2026, for every $1.70 that the stock price is above $5, I double my money. So 6.7 would be one double, 8.4 would be another double, 10.1, now that's another double, 11.8 is another double, and on you go. So if you really think Rocket Lab in January 16th, 2026 could be something like $15 a share, if you buy the stock, you get a triple, right? Because you're paying about $5 for it, and the stock price goes to 15, that's a triple. Now, if you buy the call option and it's $15 per share, now we're talking closer to a 6x of your money. So it's just a way to multiply your returns. But the risk of this is that if the stock is at $5 or below on that date, and you were wrong about this big move, instead of still owning your shares for the future like you would if you bought the stock, you get absolutely nothing. So high risk, high reward. You could lose all your money, you could multiply your returns. I'm going to keep watching this more closely. Again, I think it might drop a little further. We seem to have a little bit of a pullback going on right now. If we get down into the low fours, I think I'm going to pull the trigger on one of these. It may not be huge amounts of money, but it'll definitely be fun to see what happens. And, it'll be money that I am willing to part with and recognizing the risk around these options. And now the other thing I was thinking about is just adding more shares. And I know when I first started looking into Rocket Lab, I thought, okay, let's buy some, maybe 2,000 shares is a good number. Bought more, got more excited about it, kept adding more. And I thought, if this really does go how I think it's going to go, I want to add enough that it can make a material impact to my life and my, finances in the future. So then I decided 10,000 shares would be the good number. And then Rocket Lab seemed stupid cheap to me at one point, so I added some more, and then it was 11,000 shares. And I'm thinking about adding more again. So I'm struggling with this because, the community around Rocket Lab is great, and I look at it as we're all working together to make sure we understand the stock as much as possible and do our due diligence, and the hundreds of us distributed out there in the world with different skill sets, different knowledges, all contributing to help build out the Rocket Lab thesis. And I am just kind of one small part of that, right? But the downside of that is sometimes you can kind of get stuck in your own echo chamber, and then you see other people saying, oh, I'm buying, and then I'm like, I want to buy more because he bought more. So then I buy more, and then maybe they're like, well, Dave bought more, I want to buy more. And then it's this feedback effect. So I do want to make sure, you buy for the right reasons. I'm not buying just because I want to have as much as other people, because, my situation is different than other people's. But I'm not going to lie, when I see someone out there there who's like, yeah, I've got 30,000 shares of Rocket Lab, that does get me a little, I don't want to say jealous, but I do want to say it does make me want to buy more. So it's something I've been wrestling with. I think I likely will add more shares if it drops down to the mid fours again or lower. I just think the value of the underlying company has continued to grow, and we talk about these events like the big new contract, like Electron returning to launch, and the stock price just staying mostly flat, not really improving. So it's like almost flat over the past 2 years. And I just think about everything the company has accomplished over the past 2 years, and it's absolutely insane. Whether it's the growth in the space systems, developing Neutron, buying those factories and equipment from Virgin Orbit. A lot of the competitors are now out of business, where you think of a Virgin Orbit or an Astra, and Rocket Lab is kind of the one left standing. So many, to me, like successes and great execution, and the stock is still flat. So it does make me want to buy more, but I want to make sure I do it for the right reasons. I have been trying to engage more with Rocket Lab bears, actually, whether that's in Twitter or wherever you can find them. So if you're extremely bearish on Rocket Lab stock, I do want to hear your thoughts, because I want to make sure I'm not only stuck listening to other people who think the same thing I do and just reinforcing my own beliefs that I already have. I want to see every side of this and make sure I'm extremely confident if I add more shares, because we're talking, a pretty large position. It's not my whole portfolio. I know you have some people out there like, say, Vince, again, who, Rocket Lab is a massive, I think it's over 50% of his portfolio. For me, it's not that high. I guess in general, I'm just a little bit more risk averse, although I still do, as I said, have probably 11,000 shares, which I don't think is anything to scoff at. It's a tough one. So what I'm going to be thinking about in the coming days, in the coming weeks, is, how many more shares do I want to buy? The risk reward to me is getting more attractive as the company executes and the stock price does not move. And seriously considering looking at those leaps and those puts to make some additional money. And if the Fiance does manage to buy back in at 450 or below and capture even more gains the next time the stock goes up, I'll be sure to congratulate her on that one as well. So I think that's it for today. Just kind of my current thoughts around Rocket Lab stock, looking at some of the options we have available to us. No pun intended there. I hope you guys found this interesting. Do let me know how you're thinking about the stock and what moves you're going to make down in the comments below. I'll be sure to check those out. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this valuable and interesting, please do subscribe if you haven't already. And I hope you have a great week. I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.